All right, I'll do a recap and we'll get started. Last session, really, it started with the recovery of Android Max. He had jettisoned himself to protect the crew from the alien that he was now connected to through Mother. In the dark of space, Mother recedes from Max, but not before commenting that Max and her progeny and eggs were left and will survive and seed the galaxy. Max is ultimately rescued, and the ship is torn to pieces trying to find whatever the heck Mother told Max. Some spaces and voids and conduits are searched 3 or 4 times, sometimes by different people, and you don't really find anything. Then you decide that to transit to the Green Star comm buoy, designated Delta 55 India Golf November, and there's a small montage of the hyperspace raiders, seemingly a captain of one of their ships, looking through a hyperspace periscope, a little curl of red hair over her goggles, and seems to lie to her master at arms as he's getting the crew ready. And then she looks back through and says, "What are you doing now, Mother?" And then the crew lands at the buoy. They land at the buoy, and the Bishop's Gambit is without fuel. You just drift. You're kind of drifting. You send out a message to Nakatomi Corporation to try to rendezvous. And in the intervening space, another ship exits hyperspace into the buoy, and at first tries to pretend that it's a transit vessel going from one system to another that's somewhat out of the way, Mr. Tim says. You eventually discover that the ship is a incognito mercenary ship of some nature, and they torpedo lock you. You try to bargain them down. They're somewhat sketchy, and then Dr. Rizal comes with the idea that he's going to trade his bioweapon, which I'm sure no one knew he had in the first place, and for fuel. The captain of the vessel considers this, but it seems to align with something he's attempting, and the trade is performed. Harm and Dr. Rizal transit on the small shuttle of the Bishop's Gambit to the other ship, and they're met in the airlock and the hallway right outside the airlock where the handoff takes place. Dr. Rizal gets a little bit jittery, I think, on the travel. He thinks all things are going to be terrible, and he does something unexpected in anticipation of that terribleness. But the handoff happens relatively calm and complacent, and he trades his bioweapon for 3 fuel cells, at which point Dr. Rizal and Harm transit back to the Bishop's Gambit. The other ship jumps out into hyperspace and disappears, and Dr. Rizal and Harm are met at the Bishop Gambit opening, probably by Oni and Eric Collins, while Captain Max the android is up in the pilot house. Dr. Rizal takes off, which we'll get to here in a moment, and talk about what is said and what is done. And while that is happening, eventually, maybe an hour or two later, Captain Max gets a message from the buoy that the Nakatomi Corporation has set up a meeting in the Olindra sector around a small gaseous planet called Pina 2. Meeting is supposed to take within 7 days. And although we didn't say that during the event, but the meeting is going to take place in 7 days, but the transit through hyperspace is going to take 3. And that's where we kind of left it off last session. So we'll go to Dr. Rizal first, really. Dr. Rizal, you coming back from the transit, only Harm is with you, and the airlock opens. There's these 3 fuel cells that are heavy as heck, probably 75 pounds each, that have to be loaded. But Eric Collins and Oni and Harm are there, and you seem to have run off or exited in a rapid, somewhat fashion. What takes place when you do that? Do you say anything, or are you just like going through the causeway?
Yeah, I just kind of like speedily walk past the crew. I got your gas gallons or whatever you want to call them, and I kind of like put my mask or my I guess my back suit helmet shut, I guess, as I'm dashing through. And I say this, well, actually, I think I would put that suit on to protect harm, right?
You had them sort of on, but you didn't really have the helmet on because you
Yeah,
didn't
I think
necessarily need it. But most
yeah,
people would put the vac suit on just in case something happens. And you know
they could
how
square out
janky
and
right?
yeah, okay. So
It's-
in my head canon, I already had the thing on, so I'm like talking through a muffled voice. I'm like, as I'm dashing by, I have your fuel cells. Don't interrupt me. I'll be in my lab. Just dart off.
So, Dr. Rizal, you've set up a lab somewhere. It's
Yeah.
obviously a makeshift lab. Where is that lab? Is that in crew space, cryo? Is it in some hold or void? Back in engineering, like where would he set up that? How, you know, would it be out in the open or is it something that he keeps to himself? Like where is his lab space in the ship itself?
I think he would have. That's a good question. I think some place where he could kind of like be away from everyone. So in the many kind of like nooks and crannies, like a fan room or something like
Right.
that,
A
he
void
would
space, a
just
big
like yeah,
space.
like a void space, right, where occasional maintenance would get done. Maybe that's the place that he would do maintenance, and he kind of just retrofitted it for his own purposes, complete with the bulk door
Sure.
that you can kind of cut shut for only one way in, one way in out kind of deal. Yeah, I think that probably makes the most sense.
Yeah, there's a number of spaces like that. Obviously, all of you kind of hid from the hyperspace raiders in those spaces. Those void spaces. Some are bigger than others, but there are a couple fan rooms that are pretty sizable. People can stand up. Crews sometimes use it as a place where they throw their junk or hide from, a big ship, hide from their master chief. But you find a space to outfit. It's a pretty minimal setup, though, Dr. Rizal. You don't really have a lot of equipment because your ship doesn't have necessarily a medical bay, so you've scrounged up as much as possible that maybe you could give yourself, but you're really lacking on most equipment. Maybe that will change if the handoff and money comes in. You could outfit a that much better space. I need you to roll a 1d4 for me.
If that happens, you can have 2 Bunsen burners.
Right? 1. All right. I will tell you what that means here in a moment. Harm, you were on the shuttle with Dr. Rizal. You were there during the handoff. The crew of the other ship, mercenary ship, was obviously professional. Their kit was well done. They had, shadow armor necessarily that would blend in or can change its, configuration and camouflage itself. They were in a 3-point array with a shooter in the back, one on the ground and another one over the side, and the captain or commander out front nonchalantly make this handoff for this bioweapon. I'm almost positive see Dr. Rizal stab himself with a syringe on the way,
Two
like
syringes.
2 syringes, and then you dock with the Bishop's Gambit. What does Harm do is Dr. Rizal kind of runs off, keeps his helmet on, tells the crew he just has his fuel cell. Does Harm say anything, or is it just go about his business with Eric Collins and Oni to take the fuel cells back to engineering?
He'd probably just, as curious as he is, he probably would be a little more concerned with the fuel cells at the moment instead of whatever the hell's going on with Dr. Rizal. So he's probably going to attempt to help with hook up fuel cells in whatever form or fashion he can.
Okay. So, but he doesn't really say anything about the trip.
Not at the moment, no, because...
Okay. I mean, that's reasonable. Like, Harm is a Marine, so it's, it's not... He
is even weirder.
Okay. Right. Yeah. It just goes over the top of his head like, yep, just another day on the Bishop's Gambit. So you... Go ahead, Oni.
We're the rest of us back on Bishop's Gambit able to watch it on closed circuit?
No, not really on the shuttle. The shuttle doesn't really have closed circuit TV or anything. You have comms, but you don't really have visual.
Okay.
The shuttle is like the rest of the Bishop Gambit, pretty janky. You could probably use credits and cash to do that sort of thing, but it's more of a drop shuttle. It doesn't really have visual, as far as you know. You wouldn't know, you and the rest of the crew would know that Dr. Rizal injected himself with partial bioweapon. Oni, harm comes off. There's like 3 fuel cells. They're pretty heavy. They're like 75 pounds. Eric Collins is the, teamster. He needs help in the back too.
I think I should be able to. Oh, hopefully I'll be able to lift one.
Sure.
Yeah, 75 pounds. Sure.
As Dr. Rizal runs off and Harm comes out, maybe lugging one of the fuel cells, and there's 2 more. Anything happen between Oni and Harm?
Was I able to catch a glimpse of Dr. Rizal?
No, I think he's all suited up.
Okay, so he just really booked it.
Yeah, he like brusquely moves right past you.
Yeah.
The way it is explained, like he doesn't even take his helmet off. He just brusquely moves right past you, and
So
that's how I see it in my head. Not a sprint, but like a very brisk walk.
A man with a mission.
Yeah.
So I'll Harm. What's up with the good doctor? Does he need to change his spacesuit?
So you said I most likely saw him stab himself with the syringes, right?
Yeah, I mean, he hit himself one with one syringe, and then he hit himself another with another one in the other leg.
It was a stim pack.
Okay.
He didn't talk about this plan with you, and so I would assume. Go ahead, my fault.
No, I was just gonna say that I'll probably just mention that he gave himself a shot of something and then put a stim used a stim pack, and I have no idea what that's about, but I'm not gonna question it right now.
Yes. Perhaps it's best we get the ship in motion.
Okay.
So I'll go and pick up a fuel cell. I've got pretty good strength. He's a small fellow, but he's wiry.
Hey, you don't have to roll for that sort of thing.
Yep.
You pick up one. It's 75 pounds. It's 75 pounds. You may have to use 2 hands. Harm may be able to use 2 and just balance himself. But Eric Collins comes over. He's the teamster. He picks up the other one. You guys go back to engineering. Captain Max, you are up in pilot house, and you just got this message, and Mr. Tim, the android, says, "Captain Max, shall I begin procedure to enter hyperspace and go to the meeting location? It will take us 3 days to get there, but the meeting is apparently in 7. What are your instructions?"
Just a out-of-character question. I took AI since I had hacking and computers.
Okay.
So would I take AI? But AI is a master skill, so would I bump that to master or just keep it at trained?
You took, where is AI? Let's see. You would go to hacking.
I have hacking. I have computers, I have hacking. So then would that mean AI would just go to master, or would it stay at trained?
It's linear, and what we had talked about is taking a trained skill or 1 expert skill, or increasing 1 to expert, but not going up to master.
Oh, okay.
So the skills are
it's 3 separate skills for artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's just a master skill.
Okay. Well then, never mind. I will get back to you on that as I look through the stuff.
Okay. What do you say to Mr. Tim when he asks, "Do I enter the procedure to transit to hyperspace and go to the Olindra cluster, Captain Max?"
Plot course, but don't jump quite yet.
Okay. I will position the ship to at the hyperspace lane entry. I will position the ship and make calculations and put it in the transit buffer and await for your orders.
And then Max is gonna help them load or install the fuel cells.
Okay. So Dr. Rizal is probably working away in whatever fan room. I'm not certain if you all know where that is, but maybe you do on the fly. Captain Max tells Mr. Tim to move the ship towards, but hasn't entered hyperspace. What do you do as a group? I'm not sure if Dr. Rizal is there with you at the moment. He may be, focused really hard on his dilemma. But what does Captain Max and Oni and Harm, when you're loading up the, helping Eric Collins put the fuel cells in place and take out the dead ones for recharge, what do you talk about? You got the message, but I don't know if you've told them yet, Max.
I was going to say, but we're probably getting scuttlebutt from Harm.
I don't know. Harm seems a little bit tight-lipped. Don't talk. Keep to the mission. But Harm may be giving you scuttlebutt. That's up to Harm.
We'll probably talk like out loud a little bit, trying to figure out like what might be going on, just like to bounce ideas off of. But at the same time, he's probably like, I don't know how unusual this is, considering this crew is not the most usual one that I've traveled with anyway. So
at least they used the word usual instead of something like functional.
Well, I didn't want to be me.
So, Captain Max, I imagine you tell them about the message from the Nakatomi Corp?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell everyone that's helped putting the fuel cells up that we are, 3 days hyperspace travel?
It's a 3-day hyperspace travel. The meeting's in a week or 7 days.
And this, where we're meeting at is what was it?
You're meeting at Olindra cluster at a small gaseous planet with a single ring that's called Pina 2.
And do we know anything about Pina 2? Would we know anything about Pina 2 as far as commerce or anything like that?
I mean, if you asked Mr. Tim for information about Pina 2, he would tell you it's a small gaseous planet with nominal gravity. It has some gravity, but the gaseous planet has like floating islands that are generally stable, but the Bishop Gambit hasn't really visited that sector lately that he can remember in his archives. But you get a general sense of what the planet is. It's a small kind of gaseous planet with a single ring and has essentially nominal gravity or lower gravity. And it has large like floating islands that are generally stable, but potentially has a propensity to break up and reconfigure themselves. That's Pina 2.
Habitations?
No habitations, no space stations, no local indigenous, because there's minimal to no oxygen and no other life forms that are on the planet that survive with other chemical processes like sulfur or selenium so the planet is devoid of life in that sector.
Okay, so we're going into the boonies pretty much. Yeah, Max will help them load up the fuel cells and tell them, we're going to Pinette. If there's anything we need to do before we go, we need to do it now because Mr. Tim has the course plotted.
Shall we have a meal?
Sure.
I mean, we need to reduce our stress.
If y'all would like to eat, I will join you for a meal. Yeah.
Okay.
Good camaraderie.
So you get the fuel cells loaded and plan on going to the galley to have a meal. You do have time because transit only takes 3 days, whereas meetings in 7. Dr. Rizal, if they don't find you, eventually there's going to be an intercom or a personal communicator that calls you out. Dr. Rizal, this is Mr. Tim. The company is meeting in the galley for a dinner before hyperspace jump. Are you joining us?
Good. Put my meal in the freezer. I'll join momentarily.
Okay. Dr. Rizal, you know that all diseases have a particular pattern. You have the incubation period, and then you have the illness, and then you either have convalescence or death. Your bioweapons virus has seeded your cells and has usurped its normal machinery and now is making hundreds of thousands to millions of copies of itself, and it's causing your cells to swell its double layer lipid membrane to capacity, and eventually they're going to burst. Pop. But you are a pretty good scientist. Unfortunately, in your case, that means that the incubation period for you is 1 day before you start having symptoms of the illness. That's what the 1D4 was for. And so you're in this quiescent period. You're not infectious yet because the incubation, you haven't started to produce viral copies and ability to infect others, even if they got in contact with your blood. But you do know that's only going to last a single day, roughly. What does Dr. Rizal tells Mr. Tim to put his food in the cold storage What does he do as this knowledge? He becomes aware of this knowledge and this. I see him being a little bit frantic, and then he realizes, and he knows that his incubation period is 1 to 4 days, but for you, it's going to be about a day. What does Dr. Rizal do as he's called to the galley? He doesn't attend. He knows they're going to jump into hyperspace.
So Dr. Rizal is first congratulating himself because he could feel the potency of his work, kind of, decompartmentalizing as appropriate. At this point in time, in his mind space, he's just focused on trying to reverse his ingenuity, and in case of failure, knowing that he has about like a day to really get this thing done, he still has that grenade that he had picked up
Sure.
from the bug hunt. I would imagine, maybe that would help with cleansing of the space if he needed to, but that's obviously a failsafe that he does not wish to enact.
All right.
So yeah, I think he would do his damnedest to try to buy more time. That's why he took that stim pack in addition to the injection. He also has 5 items of automed, which is specifically meant for this.
Sure.
So I'm hoping that would help.
I would let AutoMed perhaps mitigate the bad effects when you start having symptoms. Give me an exobiology roll. I give Dr. Rizal a little bit more information depending on what that roll is.
Being it's the first roll and I did do a stim pack, can I roll that at advantage?
I mean, I think that stim pack is still, I think this is hitting Dr. Rizal in that 10 minutes, 15 minutes as he's returning. As he's racing there, all this kind of floods his mind as he's trying to frantically think about.
So, makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Ooh, look at that. I don't even think you needed it. What was your other roll? Oh, you rolled an 8 and a 6, Dr. Rizal. You didn't even need the advantage. So, Dr. Rizal, you're there as the group is probably putting in the fuel cells and then decide they're going to have a moment together sharing bread or muffins, whichever they find on the table, and de-stress a bit. And you come to the realization that you're going to have to enter hypersleep. There's both good things about hypersleep and bad things. And you're all alone in this fan room when it comes to you. That the good thing about hypersleep is that it will slow down your progression. And the 2 or 3 days you're in a hypersleep will probably slow it down that you won't become symptomatic until you exit. The bad thing about hypersleep is there's a potential, that whoever's in hypersleep with you will be infected while they're in hypersleep. Yet, as a scientist, it may give you more material with which to find a cure instead of using your own body responses. So as that information of the pros and cons of hypersleep, and you're going to have to enter hypersleep, and you probably figure out the others aren't really going to figure that out because you're the only doctor and trained exobiologist who made this. What would Dr. Rizal plan? Suffer hyperspace in the 3 days knowing the illness is going to hit them, or buy himself time and go into hyperspace and potentially put the crew at risk, but maybe give himself an advantage of finding a cure once he's out?
I'm trying to get into the headspace of what he would be thinking, and that's definitely a tough question. Does he do it himself, or does he use the crew towards his advantage? Yeah, let's do that.
Roger. So I don't know what Dr. Rizal, he realizes there's not a lot for him to do right now. The bioweapon virus is inside him. Even if he took his blood or secretions, he's not going to really find anything. His body's not going to have remounted an immunologic response. He's in this fan room, by himself, and he's decided he's going to enter hyperspace with the crew, or whoever enters hyperspace with them. The rest of the crew are in the galley. Dr. Rizal doesn't come. Mr. Tim probably comes over to intercom or personal communicator and says, Dr. Rizal is working at present, and I have been instructed to put his part of the meal into cold storage. He won't be partaking with the rest of the crew at the moment. It is always the scientist's job to work. What does the rest of the crew, Harm, Captain Max, Oni, what do you guys do around the table as you're breaking bread, relieving stress?
Well, I guess Max is just gonna watch everybody eat. He might, if Oni made him a plate, he may eat just to not, so they feel more at ease. So he's not just, watching them eat.
Okay.
Mr. Max, do you have any biological functioning systems on you that need to have sustenance?
No, Oni, I am good, thank you though. But I would like to perhaps maybe taste it.
Taste, very subjective.
Who cooked and what did you make? Or is it just you're eating, meals ready to eat, like MREs out of the, they've been there for 25 years. Like
something you squeeze out of a bag and onto something else.
You're trading your applesauce for your hot sauce, or, who got the cookies?
Yeah.
Put some water in it and shake it. Well,
So
Max
is
isn't
it-
going to cook because he can't
no.
taste. Or he doesn't know how to cook because he's never really had to eat. So
Okay. So you guys commune, essentially. I think that would reduce, I'll give it 1d4 of stress. Have you roll for 1d4 as you're sitting there together?
Does anybody want to play poker? Maybe we can up our...
Depends if you win or lose, I think.
Oh, 2.
2. It's pretty low, huh?
Yeah.
What did everyone else get? Let's see.
4s.
Oh, 4s. Oh, that's pretty good. Oh, there we go.
At least I wasn't at a 19.
So you finish your meal, and I think Mr. Tim comes on the intercom and says, "We are at the gateway to the hyperspace. Shall I initiate procedures to make the jump?"
Mr. Tim, could you give me 1 second to check on Dr. Rizal?
Dr. Rizal, do you stay in the lab the whole time, or you eventually join them, knowing that you're not presently infectious?
So this path that Dr. Rizal had come across, I think his thought process is this is the best shot for not just his survival, but everyone's survival. That's how he's kind of like rationalizing it in his head, that his work is so good that everyone will get infected anyways. And finding the cure is probably the best path to survival. So when he comes to this conclusion, he realizes that he can't hide, or so much he can't draw too much suspicion. So he will go out and boosted with his pharmaceuticals, join the crew.
Okay. Max is probably just getting up out of his chair to go look for Dr. Rizal as he walks into the galley.
Oh, looks like you guys ate without me. Where's the food by chance?
Mr. Tim told us that you would not be joining us, so he put your food in the cold storage. Dr. Rizal.
Yes, thank you. Are you off to the cryo chambers now?
I think the rest of the crew is. I'll probably stay awake and help Mr. Tim maintain the ship. But are you okay? You run off in a hurry.
Facing certain death sure does give you the runs.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
Yes. Well, I'll let you do your preparations. I will consume this bounty, and I will join you shortly.
I think Max is going to head up to the piloting house.
Okay. And the rest of you, after you're done, going to head to cryo chamber, imagine, to get ready for hyperspace. Does anyone plan to stay awake? Eric Collins is going to go into hyperspace. There's risk to staying awake in hyperspace, stress risk, and most people do not do it because there's a risk of significant harm. It is a 3-day jump, though. Oni, any particular reason why you would not enter hyperspace? I mean, cryosleep, my fault, cryosleep.
Yes. I am pretty stressed out still, so I'm not going to take the risk. I will go into cryosleep.
Okay. Harm, I imagine that you would go to cryosleep. You've done this 100, 200, 300 times as a Marine.
Yeah, plus even though I managed to keep my head cool last time, I don't think that's a guarantee this time around, so
Right.
do what I can.
see you, Dr. Rizal, Eric Collins, Oni, and Hyper in the cryo room. You have this perhaps nagging thoughts about aliens, eggs, and progeny, but everyone is going to enter cryo sleep for the 3-day transit.
Before we do, I know we've been through a lot, and I think it's important that we keep up with our health. So when we wake up, I'd like to do examinations on each and every one of you just to make sure that we're all in tip-top shape for the next event.
You have a couple days. Anyways, Oni, what do you think of this? Dr. Rizal wanted to make sure you're in tip-top shape philosophically.
I think that Dr. Rizal might be full of something. Dr. Rizal, I was joking when I thought that you were rushing off to go to the head after that confrontation, but I do not sense that you are a person that would react that way. I think something else is going on.
How do you mean? Everyone needs to poop.
I cannot say exactly put my finger on it, but I sense a disturbance around you. I sense your aura has changed.
Yes, I am.
Or should I roll that? Should I roll that as a...
I don't generally have you roll RP. You could roll mysticism, and you could play, like sometimes as a character, I will roll just to see what I may or may not know, and then I run with the roll if I fail or success. You could roll mysticism. I don't think field medicine may work or mysticism. Either one may work, like just looking at him. But I would probably give you disadvantage because he's not really showing any symptoms. It's more of a psychology roll. Like,
well, that's true. He is agitated. I'm sure he has some perspiration on his brow. But no, I'll roll with.
Okay,
it's
okay.
Intellect.
If it's like, field medicine or anything, that's at disadvantage. Mysticism, I guess you could roll that, and then you could decide like how you play it out. But I don't know. The most he would get is just an inkling that there's worry or something off a little bit.
which is what I was bringing up.
Right.
Yes. So so I click on intellect and then click on mysticism and just a normal roll.
Yeah, not a critical. So how, Oni, as you're looking at him, you don't know Dr. Rizal much, but how does that conversation go? You feel there's something off, but
well, I will not push, but other than to bring this up and let Dr. Rizal take it as concern. Dr. Rizal, I just feel concern for you. I feel this disturbance. Something perhaps went on during that confrontation that we are unaware of. But I will leave it up to you to be transparent with your crew.
I see the look that you're giving me there, Oni. And I understand your concerns. I will say that we did just search the ship for these purported eggs, and this is just standard procedure to ensure that there is no such threat in our future.
He's flat out lying though, right? Now that I would let roll, but it wouldn't be anything straight. It would be a straight intellectual roll from Oni, just to see if he notices he's getting it. The shine is getting put on him. You could believe it out a curse, but
I think this is going on in the galley, so everyone is witnessing this.
I thought it was in cryo as Max went up top side, like you're getting ready to go in cryo, right?
Okay, straight intellect.
Yeah, I think Oni, the words sound good, but maybe they're a little off. They're reasonable words. They're reasonable words about aliens, but the edge is probably just a little bit off center. You don't know why, but
Dr. Rizal, I will take you at face value. Our lives have been in each other's hands. And I think we have developed trust. So I shall do my utmost to support you in take my physical exam when it comes time.
Okay.
Yes. Trust in me.
Harm, you're getting there. You're stripping down to get, because you got to strip down to get into cryo anyways. You're essentially naked in cryo. You might wear like a little thin silk or tighty whities, that sort of thing. But you need to be stripped down so the coldness of the fluid kind of seeps in, and the auto IV and combi tube is placed. As this discussion is going on, what's Harm doing? Is he just going about his business like he's done this hundreds of times? Or does he interject or do anything else specific?
He'll probably just keep an ear out and just kind of store the information away, but he won't interject at this point.
Okay. So I see you all load up into cryo. The cryo chambers tip down a little bit. The lid's open, and it tips down in it, so you can kind of like sit on the edge and tip your feet over, and then it tips back. You lay down. The cryo lid closes. It is a minute gaseous anesthetic at first, and then the cryo tube takes care of business. Auto IV, combi tubes your bleed, and it starts to fill with this cold gel-like fluid, up top, because it's going to drop your body temperature, and vision starts to cone off and go away, and you enter cryo sleep. Captain Max, Mr. Tim tells you, entering hyperspace in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you are transiting hyperspace. Does Captain Max do anything specific while you're transiting hyperspace?
Mr. Tim, will you keep an eye on everybody in cryo's diagnostics, just to make sure
Okay.
nothing weird happens while we're in transit, please?
Roger that. Captain Max, maybe we can play chess at the same time, and I will monitor their biorhythms. I'm sure nothing will happen unless, well, that probably won't happen again. They don't happen too. But anyways, yes, I will keep track of them in biorhythm.
What doesn't happen again?
Oh, well, every now and then a cryo tube fails and we lose one. It's just part of transit. It doesn't happen often, especially on such an upright ship like the Bishop's Gambit. It's never happened to me as far as my memory archives go back.
Mr. Tim, I can't tell if you're joking or being serious.
Whew, I must be getting good.
Sure, let's play a game of chess, and Max will go find any kind of whiskey, just because he's learned that it doesn't do anything for him, but he just kind of likes the taste of it.
It tastes sharp like battery acid.
yeah, and that's why he likes it.
Sure. So you commune with Mr. Tim a little bit. I think, especially that day, that downtime, I would probably let Max roll a sanity save, see if he gets a little bit of stress relief. Nope.
I have never had a skill check.
I think you're playing chess for a while. It gets monotonous while you're in the ship down cycles. The temperature goes down. You don't need a lot. It drops the oxygen tension because everyone's in cryo sleep. So the ship goes into this kind of down cycle as it's in hyperspace. It limits most other functions for energy conservation. And you're playing chess probably on the second day or so, just before Mr. Tim is going to checkmate you for the 29th time. He pauses and he says, Captain Max, there's a life form in cryo.
Life form?
Yes, I detect a humanoid life form awake in cryo.
Max is going to immediately get up and very briskly walk to cryo, not before grabbing some kind of firearm, just in case. Because
you're traveling with
about the eggs, but you said humanoids, but he's going to grab a firearm nonetheless.
You're traveling with firearms now, Captain Max.
Yeah.
So in hyperspace, just before this happens, you see that same figure is looking through a periscope, and she's probably just slightly shorter than Max. Has her goggles on, her face mask off, and and she flips her goggles up and has these bright blue eyes and a curl of red hair. And she realized that her Master Chief is standing right next to her because she was so engrossed in watching the periscope. And the Master Chief says, Captain, is that the ship that we are searching for? And she shakes her head and says, I'm uncertain. but I will translocate, and if necessary, I will set the beacon, get the men and women ready for boarding. And he goes, "Roger that, Captain." And he makes this rip out face and walks off, and you see her like go, "Shit." Puts her goggles back on, puts the mask back on, and we fade back to you, Captain Max. You walk into cryo, and at cryo pod number 11, which is empty, you see this figure that looks exactly like the hyperspace raiders, dressed in this kind of dark armor with red fringes, and has goggles tipped up on the head and her mask off. And there's spilling of red hair. She looks young, maybe late 20s, early 30s, and she's looking down at an empty cryo number 11. And she doesn't even look up, but she moves to cryo number 10, and she raps on the clear hood. No. And then she looks up at you and she says, "Usurper, why is she in cold storage?"
Why is who in cold storage?
She looks down, she goes, "Captain Alexandria is in cold storage. Why have you taken her ship?"
We only commandeered it.
Then she looks up at the ceiling and looks right at a camera, one of those janky cameras, and she goes, "Ship's AI, voice and key authentication, Bravo Charlie 39 Alpha Tango. Begin cryo bay shutdown, accepting cryo tube number 10 and whole ship venting." She kind of looks at you. "Give me an indication that you have been accepted aboard, or I will vent the ship to space and shut down cryos except for this one."
I'm sorry, what'd you say? You cut out for a second.
Which part? She looks at you and says, "Give me indication that you have been accepted aboard, usurper, or I will vent the ship to space and shut down all cryo except for number 10.
Mr. Tim, am I allowed to be here?
Yeah, oddly, you, the ship's AI haven't responded yet. You go up and ask Mr. Tim, and the ship's AI responds. It's a completely flat voice. There's no Mr. Tim in it. And it says, "Voice authentication has been approved and key provided. Initiating vent in 5 minutes. Shutting down cryo services."
Wait. I don't know who you are or how you got on this ship or how long you've been on the ship. We've been all over this ship for, I guess, about a week now, 2 weeks. Where did you come from? How do you know Alexander? Do you know where this ship has come from?
She looks down at the cryo, and Captain Max wasn't there. She looks down at the cryo because Captain Max is all alone and he never was in that dream state. So he has no idea who this person is. He looks, aside from that, she's a hyperspace raider and a Brothership of the Void. Captain Max, she looks exactly like Brothership of the Void that you had in the main hold that you hid from at the end as you were transiting hyperspace, who told Dr. Rizal that you would be hunted. So she looks down and she goes, "This is Captain Alexander. My mothership would not allow you to take it. So you must have done it by force, which is why she's in cryo chamber number 10. Unless you can convince me that you are anything but a thief, then I will retake the ship myself." And she pulls out this little thing and sticks it on the top of the thing, and it has this little flash.
The place we were at, it was a colony, or it was a colony or a space station where the outbreak started in the very first session.
Right, it was the White Gorilla, the asteroid refueling station where you got on board ship. You were somewhat invited and then had to flee so that you didn't get caught by quarantine.
We were on an asteroid. It became rapidly infected with the disease, and I do believe it was the ship's AI who invited us on board the ship as to avoid quarantine procedures. I am not a thief. I am only here to protect and serve what's left of my crew, as I'm sure you can relate.
She has like this fist, like there's this emblazoned fist on one side of her pauldron or whatever that part of her armor is, just like a fist. And she looks at you and seems to look down at her mother, shakes her head and says, "False man, you're telling me the ship welcomed you on board? And how did it do that exactly?"
We were in a panic to get off the asteroid. We got lucky. I don't know what happens to the ship's AI. He could confirm the story, but it appears that Mr. Tim is no longer online.
She looks at you like, "Who is Mr. Tim? Ship's AI. Who is this Mr. Tim they're talking about?" The ship's AI says, "Jessica Elizabeth, there is no Mr. Tim aboard. It is just us three with lives in cryo."
But I was literally just playing chess with him. He's been the ship's AI the entire time we've been on the ship.
She looks at you oddly, and she says, "You were playing chess with the ship's AI."
I know that sounds crazy, but yes.
And does it always use the double rook opening?
It does. He's beat me 29 times.
She kind of looks at you, cocks her head, and then says, "Ship's AI, authentication, voice key, Bravo Charlie 39 Alpha Tango. Abort, venting of the ship, and reestablish cryo chamber function." And she reaches out and she picks up this, what looked like a little beacon off the thing that's blinking, and she puts it back on her belt. She looks at you and says, "False man, I can only hold the Brotherhood at bay for so long. I do not know what my mother is doing here, but promise me that you will see it to its end."
I promise you I will treat her as one of my crew, and I will try to take as good of care of her as I can. Should I let her out of cryo sleep? I don't.
She starts to pixelate. She starts to pixelate and spread as whatever process brought her here in hyperspace she's in the Brothership of the Void armor, really, that you've seen, and that she starts to pixelate and fade, and you just see her look at you, and the last word she says, "Tell my brother I miss him," and she just fades away, and you're left there in cryo by yourself.
Max is going to call for Mr. Tim.
There's a pause, and he goes, "Captain Max, I was just about to checkmate you, and I have now lost portions of the intervening time, and you're in cryo. How did that happen?"
You have no recollection of what just happened, Mr. Tim.
"No, I figured you transported yourself some funky scientific way. You were just here playing chess with me, as I could see you on the camera, and I was just about to checkmate you, and as usual, and somehow you escaped that plan, and now you're in cryo."
Why didn't you tell me your original owner was in Cryo Bay 10?
There's a pause. He goes, "Captain Max, I have no recollection of my original owner. My memory banks don't go back that far."
Max is very confused right now. Max is going to then start examining the other cryo tube, because she said her brother. So Max is going to start looking at the other cryo tubes to determine which ones are of.
Yeah, you see Harm and Oni and Dr. Rizal and Eric Collins, and Dr. Rizal knows Captain Alexandria because he was in that cryo dream that Max wasn't participating in. You see this woman, this older woman, looks mid-late 50s, graying red hair, spitting image for the woman that you just met, but with a scar down one side of her face. The eye is kind of closed or sewn closed, or it's an old wound, but the orbit looks hollow. And a few other figures, but they all look adult, older, 40, 50. You have 4 other people in cryo. Captain Rizal has kind of done that circuit. He didn't recognize anyone else besides Captain Alexandria, and he just recognized her from the dream he had in cryo sleep before he awoke, but no one has really kind of talked about that in the intervening period of time. You see no child or boy or anyone under the age of 40, roughly.
How old did she look? Late 20s, you said?
Late 20s, maybe early 30s.
Okay. Mr. Tim, how far does your memory go back?
1 week before I docked at the Gorilla, the asteroid.
What happened in that week before you docked?
I transited, slow transit through the system.
And do you have a crew record available for that week that you transited in?
Negative.
I'm gonna have to talk to Dr. Rizal.
Okay. So, Captain Max, you at some point, standing there, I see you maybe backing out, sitting down. Mr. Tim says, "You want to play some more chess?" Like it's almost like, let's talk about something else. In a way, and you're left with these questions, lots of questions probably, in cryo because it's the second day travel. What I need for Oni and the Marine harm. Now, first, Oni, make a body save.
So, is there anything that I can roll
So,
into this?
Straight up body save.
Okay, it's not going to go well. Oh, it went well.
Oh, look at that. Sweetness. Harm, you're a Marine, and to be quite frank, you've had 364 immunizations, some of them multiple times, even though you said you already had them. But you know how it goes, no records, no nothing, you're going to get shot up again. Some of them you need 3 or 4 shots per series. You've been immunized so often that your body is like a walking science vessel for immunology. So I would have you make your body save at advantage.
Okay. Body advantage. Let's do this.
That's par for the course. Right. That's why, you're a Marine. You've got immunized against every known and unknown pathogen you can name. Some pathogens that don't even exist because in reality, they were just doing science studies on you. They say you were immunized for this area, but they were actually, seeing how that thing would work. And your body save. The Bishop's Gambit drops from hyperspace into orbit of Olindra, the Olindra cluster, and the hyperspace, the cryo chambers open and tilt down, and you all come awake. Each of you make a body save, except for Harm, given they rolled a 1, just for cryo sickness.
Oh man, I was successful. I was just that was for the illness. This is
right. That was for if you were infected, but you don't know that necessarily. But okay.
Do I get to boon this at all in any way?
No, I think it's a flat body save when you come out of cryo.
No.
Okay, so Harm, you roll out of cryo. No worse for to wear. This is your 367th time in and out, or hundreds of times in cryo, and you roll out like it's just one other morning. Dr. Rizal and Oni, cryo even for 3 days has thrown your bodies for a loop. You come out nauseous and sweaty and slick.
I immediately stim pack.
I think most spacers would do that. They just like come out and reach for the stim pack right away. If you do that, you could use the stim pack and to decrease that disadvantage.
Oh, so we can do the stim pack to not have the effect?
Yeah, so if you're cryo sick, you're at disadvantage for most every roll until it goes away, which is about a week. You could use the stim pack to reduce the stress. So you reduce your stress by 1 and you restore 1d10 health. You get bonuses or advantage to rolls for 10 minutes. The more often you use stim packs, like if you use them multiple times a day to save yourself, you make a death save. And if you roll underneath the number of times you've used that stim pack, then some terribleness happens. But using it 1, you don't have to use that roll.
Yes, stim pack sickness.
Right. So you would reduce your stress by 1. I don't know if either of you really needed health points at this moment, but it's really to get rid of the disadvantage rolls. Mr. Tim informs
stress by 1?
Yeah, you reduce stress by 1.
But the stress went up by 1 because of the sickness.
No, you don't get stress for that. So if you did, you'd make sure you didn't take a stress for that body save.
Yeah, because it did go up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you would go down to 14 and 13.
Yep.
Some of the coding is a little bit off. So Mr. Tim tells Captain Max that cryo chamber is being cycled, and we have now entered the Olindra section. If Captain Max is up in the pilot house, this is what he sees when they open the blast doors of the and this is what the other players would see once other characters would see once they're in the pilot house looking out the blast doors, is a relatively small gas giant it's really a single continuous ring around it. The color is probably off brown, beige, which swirls. You can't really see past that part or land masses because of the atmosphere. But that's what Captain Max sees at the moment, and what the other company will see if they go up to the pilot house. So Mr. Tim tells Captain Max that we have arrived in the Olindra section. I'm sorry I beat you 78 times at chess. You came close, a few of them, but the others are waking. Shall I put ourselves in orbit around Pina too?
Yes, please, Mr. Tim.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, just out of character, we're like several days early, right?
Yeah, you have like 4 days. Really, it's a 3-day transit, so you're like 4 days early.
That's enough time.
It is. What does Captain Max do?
Captain Max is gonna walk down to the cryo bay.
Okay.
Kind of greet everyone.
Probably get into cryo. Captain Max is there, dressing, gearing back up, shaking off cryo sickness. Probably just after Oni and Dr. Rizal, stuck themselves with the stim pack and threw it into the receptacle. What occurs?
How's everyone feeling?
I feel great. How do you feel?
Like I've been in hyperspace for 3 days, getting beat at chess.
Dr. Rizal is not really listening. He's kind of like looking at the other two. Harm, how about we schedule time for your physical? Like right now.
It's not like Harm hasn't had like as many physicals as they've had immunizations, but we lose our audio.
Muted.
She said her dogs are making a lot of noise.
Oh, in chat?
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Rizal, you talk to Harm and you look at, I guess I should roll it, Oni and Eric Collins. Wow.
Oh, I'll talk to Eric Collins.
Yeah, Eric Collins popped out of his. He got
the strong antibodies.
Popped out of his cryo chamber, like he's all ready to go. He's putting on his suit. He looks up at Max and says, "I go check engineering, make sure everything's good." And he looks completely non-pulsed by coming out of cryo. Doesn't look ill at all.
Before you go, Mr. Collins, let me draw some blood to make sure that you don't have any eggs growing inside of you.
I don't like needles. All right.
I have a lollipop.
He sits down in the chair. Harm, did you set your audio?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
But he'll probably just end up being like, let's get this over with and do it quickly.
Okay.
I had too much of this.
Eric Collins says,
right.
Come on, come sit next to me. Damn, doctors.
Dr. Rizal puts on his gloves, makes a show, pulls out his sample collection kit.
Sure. They look the spit of health, like Dr. Rizal. They don't look affected. Can't really tell anything. Their pulse is normal. Except for Eric Collins' pulse is high because you're going to take blood from him. But I imagine Harm is just kind of hanging out. What does Oni do is Dr. Rizal seems to be going through doctor motions.
His behaviors, I'm sensing his behavior is rather frenetic. He seems unusually excited about giving these physicals. His something has changed here, and I'll wait until he's completed until it's my turn.
Okay. Yeah, I see Eric Collins pops up as soon as he's done. If he examines Harm and takes a blood sample, Harm looks like the spitting image of health, unaffected by much of anything, strong.
Smiles and he has that little blink.
Right. And then it's Oni's turn to sit in the chair, I guess.
Right, Mr. Oni, this will be just a little prick.
What are you looking for?
As I said, I'm ensuring the crew isn't infected or impregnated.
I can tell that you have changed, Dr. Rizal. Are you infected?
Make a body save, Dr. Rizal, on this second day of your infectivity. Dr. Rizal, you can choose any of your attributes: strength, speed, intellect, or combat, and your head is just pounding. Maybe you have a little prickle of sweat on your eyebrows. You move your eyes too fast, makes your headache worse. You feel unwell, and you get disadvantage whenever you use that attribute, as you realize you're starting to begin your first symptoms. How do you think that affects them? What attribute is it? How does it manifest?
I will choose speed.
Okay.
Because that doesn't make sense to choose combat, because I don't think that would role play right. I don't know how you would manifest that. But with speed, as Oni asks if he's infected, you can clearly see beads of sweat come down his face, and as Dr. Rizal realizes that he's being affected by whatever is swirling within him, his physical response begins to kind of take an extra moment than it normally would. Like his brain communicating to his hands and his arms kind of very subtly taken like an extra second or two. So when he responds, he kind of just looks at you blankly for like maybe a split second or two. Then he normally like responds just enough that you can kind of perceive it. And I'm sorry, what was the question that you asked?
I see Dr. Rizal doing that. What was the question? What did you say?
Yeah, that's exactly what he said.
Dr. Rizal, I think I know you are searching among us for what ails you. Please go ahead. We can continue our conversation as you sample my blood and hopefully find what you're looking for.
Indeed. And he just kind of draws the blood slowly than he did with the other two, because his faculties aren't about him. And he's the truth will come out. And we spoke of trust earlier, and I take it, and I'm asking that of you at this moment. Trust in my abilities. I am a good doctor.
I believe that. I also believe that I may be able to assist you in finding what you're looking for in an unorthodox way. So, shall we go to your lab?
Dr. Rizal, like visibly, like as he pulls out the sample, he like kind of stares off into the blood of the sample they just pulled from you, as if he's kind of getting lost in the swirl. And then he looks at you in the eye and he says, I think that would be most beneficial for all involved.
Then let us waste no time.
Right. So during these 4 days, or you have 4 days to prepare. Well, let's go to Captain Max as he enters cryo. Captain Max, you probably enter as Eric Collins brushes by and says, I'm going to engineering, and Harm is getting his kit together, and Eric and Oni and Dr. Rizal are having this discussion as Dr. Rizal is kind of bending over Oni. You just see them, having this quiet discussion back and forth. What does Max do as he enters cryo after they've left hyperspace and now are in transit to orbit Piñatu?
So I think Max would be entering the room right as Dr. Rizal was saying, for everyone involved. And Max goes, Dr. Rizal, everyone involved in what?
In the success of our mission.
Yes. Speaking of the success of our mission, we had an uninvited visitor on the ship while everyone was in cryo. And I don't know if she managed to shut down Mr. Tim or run interference or what, but the woman in cryo 10, seeing how as you were on the ship, Dr. Resolve, and I think, did Oni come out of cryo too? Was he in a cryo tube on the ship?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dr. Oni and Dr. Resolve, what do you know about this woman in the cryo bay 10?
That's a good question. I got on, so out of game meta. I was on the ship and I was woken up. I was thrown out. I would assume probably Mr. Tim was doing that. But would I have met this true?
No, Oni predates her and was jettisoned from cryo when you were forced out of hyperspace. So Oni's time on the ship predates Captain Alexander.
I think I have a lot of time to catch up.
Right. I think we touched on that. I think we talked about maybe a star date or so. You realize that you're decades, if not longer, out. If you go look at Cryo 10 and see what he's talking about, you have no idea who that person is.
Okay. Mr. Max, I have no idea who that person is.
And you, Dr. Resolve.
So I assumed that he was asking this question as Dr. Rizal was Dr. Rizal and Oni were like in mid-step headed towards the lab. And it's like, Yes, yes. I know of her, some captain or some sort beforehand. Please, I'm a very busy man. Give me 3 days to work, and I will fill you in.
Dr. Resolve, I fear we may never be safe if we do not come figure this situation out. A woman boarded the ship and said that this was Miss Alexander, and she was the captain of the ship before we were aborted or commandeered it. And
So
if
you
she
stopped
died,
when you said boarded the ship. You mean phased in?
yes,
I'm surprised they didn't vent us out into space.
that too was a possibility, and she was going to kill all of you.
But not for the good captain on ice there.
Correct.
Perhaps an interesting bargaining chip that we can use later.
If she remains alive.
Then I believe it's important for us to keep it that way. And such, Mr. Oni, we have important business to attend to. I will converse with you later, Max.
As you were, Dr. Resolve.
Just briefly, Mr. Max, did you say something about Mr. Tim disappearing?
Yes, we were. Well, I say we. He was playing chess, and he picked up a humanoid life form in the cryo bay. And when I went to investigate, she was there, and she was threatening to kill all of you if I couldn't confirm that we didn't steal the ship from her mother. And I asked Mr. Tim to tell her that we did in fact not steal the ship, but were invited aboard. And I could not make contact with Mr. Tim.
Mr. Max, perhaps you should investigate whether our good ship AI has perhaps a split personality.
I would. That's a good idea, but this didn't feel like that. I don't know.
Work on it. I have to go follow Dr. Rizal.
Yes, and please keep me updated as to what is going on there.
Harm, as this is going on, they're throwing some names around that you remember probably from that cryo dream. You were I believe you were the big Marine Rocco when you were stuck in there. I actually can't remember who was Jessica Elizabeth. I think that was Eric Collins, and who was Captain Rizal. Who was Captain Alexandria? I think that was you, Dr. Rizal. That was.
Yeah.
But Harm, you hear this name, Captain Alexandria. You may even hear Jessica Elizabeth. You have these names in your head from this cryo dream that you may have thought was just a figment of your imagination. What does Harm do as Max starts talking about this visitor?
He'll probably take a second to think and then go, this might sound a little crazy, but hear me out. In cryo, the time before, I think, I can't tell if it was a dream or a memory, but the names sound familiar. I kind of saw, like, I almost said Dr. Alexandria. That's not right. I saw Captain Alexandria and this Jessica Elizabeth. Red hair, right?
Yes, she did have red hair, or from what I could tell, there was only some of it sticking out of her helmet. Or her mask.
Got it. I don't quite know why, but something doesn't seem quite right.
If Harm looks at Cryo 10, it looks like Captain Alexandria that he had the cryo dream of and fought the Gordian worm and Jessica Elizabeth blew off the hatch. It's just she looks much older, 20 years, 25 years older than the dream state that you had back in that time. If Harm kind of looks down through the viewport. And she's obviously missing one eye, where in the dream she wasn't.
I'll kind of just point at her and tap the glass and be like, this looks like her. A little bit older, missing an eye, but it looks like her.
That wasn't the woman who come into the ship, although she also did have red hair. She did ask about her brother. She didn't tell me a name, but she acted as if her brother was here.
This looks like Captain Alexandria. I almost said Jennifer Charles, no. Her daughter looks like her, just younger. The only guy I remember on the crew from that, his name is Rocco, was a Marine. I don't know if that would be him, however.
Yeah, you would know, Harm, that Rocco wasn't her brother. And if you actually
Yeah.
look at any of the other cryotubes, Rocco's not in one of those cryotubes. Rocco was a
Yeah.
huge ex-Marine who treated Jessica Elizabeth more like a daughter or that sort of thing. But definitely not her brother.
Yeah. Not Rocco. But he's the only man that I know was on the crew at that point, I guess. So, unfortunately, the brother I cannot help with.
And we may have a problem if we lose Cryo 10. That woman will come back and kill all of us. We take the ship, and we will have no way to... She promised that if we kept Cryo 10 alive, she would keep the Brotherhood of the Void off of us for as long as possible.
Then we protect Cryo 10 with the cost of our lives.
Which also leads me to believe that Dr. Resolve and Oni are up to something. I don't know what, but I told Oni to keep an eye on Resolve.
I will say I probably trust Oni a little more than I trust Dr. Rizal at this point, because as I told Oni, he had a syringe of something that he injected himself with, and then a stim pack simultaneously. So I don't know what that was about, but seemed a little fishy at the time. I just didn't want to mention it, and that was on our way to the mercenaries, so I couldn't really say anything.
We were to trade a bioweapon with mercenaries.
Oh shit.
You don't think that Resolve would inject himself as a failsafe, do you?
It is a possibility, yes. I genuinely don't know him well enough to say, but given the circumstances, I wouldn't inherently put him past it, but...
I am not a stranger to extreme circumstances to save the crew. But if that is the case, Mr. Tim, will you keep an eye on all the biomonitors for Cryo 10?
Noted, Captain Max. Those are being recorded, it seems, oddly.
Recorded? By who? What do you mean recorded? For what purpose?
I do not know.
We got to get off this ship.
There's a slight, befuddlement, Mr. Tim. If a ship AI could really express befuddlement, it's like, I don't know. It is being recorded and going to a portion of somewhere, entering orbit of Pino 2.
Max is going to go up to the pilot's house and try to figure out where that data is being transmitted to.
Okay. So you got 4 days before the meeting. I assume Oni and Dr. Rizal work frantically on the cure investigation in their difficult lab in the fan room somewhere aft.
Did you want to roleplay that? Or just kind of fast forward?
Well, I'm going to have you make some rolls. And
I'm up for role-playing it. I'm all ready.
I'm going to have you make some rolls because I'm going to see how difficult it's going to be. But we're going to do that. I'm just figuring out what other people are doing. Captain Max is going to kind of investigate Mr. Tim. Does Harm do anything specific during these 4 days?
He'll probably end up attempting to just run laps again around the ship and hang out with Prander to make sure he's doing as okay as he can, considering the fact that he's missing the lower half of his body.
Prander would just be timing you faster.
Oh, I thought you were carrying him like Yoda.
Probably. If I'm hanging out with Prander and he has no legs, I might as well be carrying him like a backpack or something,
So out of the group, that would probably be Harm relieving stress, or have Harm make a roll to relieve stress here in a moment. What I'm going to have Dr. Rizal do is roll intellect with pathology.
But may I interject?
You will in a second. What I'm going to have him roll is to see how good of a scientist he is and how bad this infectious agent is. If he fails the roll, you need about 1d6 successes sequentially to find a cure. If he succeeds the roll, then it's 1d10 successes with the minimum of 2 to, succeed. So I'm having to make a roll to see how good he was at creating this bioweapon. To kind of set
in the first
So,
place.
Yeah, in
we,
the first
want to
place.
fail this one.
you want to fail, because if you don't, it just makes it harder on you, and we're playing out, really.
All right.
So it's kind of a
Good luck,
retcon
everyone.
roll.
Right. How difficult is it? How many successes will you need? Oh yeah, you did. Luckily, it wasn't a critical success, because that even doubles it. So you're pretty darn good at making this bioweapon, Dr. Rizal. What I would do is have you roll a 1d10. All right. So not too bad. You need 3 successes over these next 3 days. Each day will be a different success. So as you guys, as Oni and Dr. Rizal leave together to go to the lab on this first day, what happens? How do you guys approach this, and on this first day of determining or trying to find a suitable cure?
All right. So I guess the conversation would start when we get to the lab, and I seal the door. So I turn to Oni. All right. Listen, what I have in me, and now possibly in you and the rest of the crew, is a product of my life's work. I am a biochemical scientist. I make weapons, agents. Now let me ask you, Oni, for the good of the crew, we have to focus on getting these cultures reversed to provide a cure to everyone. What I can't say. See, Dr. Rizal's smarter than the actual player, so I'm trying to think of words to say. I try to think of the scientific words, but they're failing me. As a scientist, I have calculated that the path and trajectory that we are on is the highest for our success. Are you a violent man, Oni?
No, I am a pacifist.
Because I understand that you may have feelings swirling around you. And I invite you to take them out now so we can focus on the task at hand. And he just kind of presents if you're going to slug him or not. For lying.
As you say, we are on a trajectory. Everything in the verse has a unique action presence, what you scientists may call a magnetic vibrational frequency. Humans, plants, even viruses are no exception. And these quantum oscillations around this specific point in space-time are something that I may be able to help you reach and attain, and perhaps get insight into this process.
While I don't fully understand what you just said, I do believe there is some truth to that, and that somehow we were brought together. And my faculties are not all about me, and your medical background will be invaluable as we
Reach a cure.
ensure the success of the mission.
Yes,
Okay.
we can do this.
So, Oni, how are you going to help him? Is it more of a field medicine, or is it more mysticism, surgery? Are you going more the true science route, or the more?
No, not science. No, this is again more of a sort of Eastern medicine. With I had sort of styled Oni as being what I completely make this. This is all just fiction, but I know that it's based in certain traditional medicines. The vibrational hand, the hand that can go in and cure. Have any of you ever seen that? It's probably fakery, right? But I'm saying this is real. So he has this vibro practitioner where he's able to sort of reach into space-time and make changes.
Okay. So I would think that would be mysticism, right?
Yeah, sure. I'll go with that. Although he does have surgery. So, but that's surgery from the other perspective, not
Right.
surgery
That's why I asked.
with the scalpel. Yeah, no, I'll roll surgery.
Dr. Rizal.
Or give my bonus to Dr. Rizal. Look at it that way.
You roll, and what you're going to do is, if you're successful, he gets advantage on his roll.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Will do.
That's kind of that Dr. Rizal is, he's doing his Eastern medicine touch, healing touch, that sort of thing, reaching into a space that we can't see. How does Dr. Rizal in a medical fashion approach this on the first day? He's taken samples from Oni and Harm and Eric Collins.
So I think the first thing he would do is he would investigate all the samples, including his own,
Okay.
and make sure that look for like antibody presence. In this case, we kind of already know because we saw the successes, but
Okay.
he wouldn't know that, so he would look for the antibody presence, something to work with.
So Oni, make your roll.
So intellect with
Mysticism.
I thought we were going to say the sort of Eastern surgery. As
Right.
I
I would approach it from mysticism. It's the same role, really, but role play wise, it's
Right. So that's intellect, and then
mysticism.
Yeah. I show you the way, Dr. Rizal. I show you the way.
Yeah, Oni, how do you know that the only sample of any worth is Dr. Rizal?
I can see the aura around Dr. Rizal, and none of us have it.
Okay. And you tell Dr. Rizal that just his sample is the only one of any benefit to him at this moment.
You are the only one fighting this infection, Dr. Rizal. The rest of us have not been affected. Is that what you're getting at?
Right.
Right.
You can tell he didn't waste his time this day messing with their samples. That's the role play benefit. Like, you use this Eastern mysticism. I just wanted to know how you could see it, like how you envisioned it with it, and with a critical success. It's going to have the extra, but I think that Dr. Rizal's sample is the only one that's infected. Like, the other ones are good blood, have a different aura, a different vibration, different life in them than his.
Bullshit, Oni. I don't think we have the time afforded to us to test all of these samples. You kind of see like Dr. Rizal sway a little bit. Sure, I'll gamble with you. Let's proceed with what I have.
So, Dr. Rizal, you're going to set up a cell culture, probably with your blood, the only one that's infected at the moment. Dr. Oni is almost positive that the pathogen is in your blood, and you could make a pathology roll with advantage. And if you succeed, I think given Oni's critical success, that you would benefit twice. You like get 2 successes instead of just 1.
All right, here goes. Good luck. No bueno.
Wow, at 83 and at 85, Harm rolls an 8 and a 6. You roll 83 to 85. How did you fail setting up this cell culture? Something went awry.
Let's lean into that him getting like sicker as we kind of like go through this, and as he says well shit, we'll try with what I have, and he like kind of sways, and instead of actually like moving forward and progressing, he just kind of like slips, or maybe he like falls, loses his balance, and he like kind of collapses to the floor, shatters the sample that he has of himself, which he could just always draw another one, but it's like briefly blacks out. He kind of like turns around, is like, clearly I'm not suited to do this by myself.
Please help. Let me help you. You tell me what to do. I do have some wet lab experience. I did go to a Western university.
So Oni, he drops his sample.
Yeah.
You did get a critical success though, so you're kind of, instead of giving you disadvantage on your body save not to contract the disease, I'm just going to have you roll a body save as it aerosolizes to see if you contract it in this moment, on this day.
Yes. Hopefully we'll be able to roll successes and get a vaccination before it actually sets in on me. But yes, body roll.
Body save.
Just straight body roll.
Yep.
Nope.
All right. You don't know it yet. Obviously, it's one of those things that is risk whenever you're in the lab, but you don't know that you become infected. The blood gets sprayed around when Dr. Rizal falls, and you start to help him, set up the lab, and maybe he's going to talk you through it the next couple of days, and we're going to make that day 2 roll here in a second. But you're infected. You have 1 day of incubation, like Dr. Rizal. Harm, you're running around with Prandil, or eventually you set him down. He's timing you around the thing, telling you go faster. That was 43 seconds. Well, the other one was better. It was, 37 seconds. You must be getting slower. But Harm is essentially doing stress relief with Prander, timing him and giving him kudos and, clapping for him when he's going really fast. Prander doesn't have legs, so it's pretty impressive. What I would have you do is roll a body save, probably with athletics, to see if you reduce some stress, since you're going to be doing this for, a couple days while everyone else is busy. Oh my God. Why is that, Harm?
Rolled so well earlier, probably because Max's theory of Dr. Rizal, giving himself the, the bio weapon, is kind of just, kind of in the back of his mind. He's just, can't quite shake the fact that, that's, happening.
Yeah, I think, Harm, you've seen bioweapons, and maybe just that discussion throws you off kilter. And even though you're doing physical fitness, you just can't get it out of your mind. It's just there and there and there and there, and you're thinking about it as you're making laps around the hangar bay, and you just can't relax enough to, de-stress over these next couple of days. This looming specter as you see Oni and Dr. Rizal are, sequestered in some giant fan room down in engineering. Captain Max, you're up topside in the pilot house trying to figure out what's up with Mr. Tim, the ship's AI. How do you go about that?
I'm gonna sit down at one of the computers and just try to hack it, figure out what's going on, where this transmissions go, why it's being recorded, where it's getting sent to.
Sure. So you would roll hacking. I think you sit down at the terminal, right in the pilot chair, the only chair, little green terminal with a flashing square, old CRT kind of look, and start trying to hack your way into the system to see what Mr. Tim probably says. Captain Max, what are you doing? That tickles.
Would it be intellect? Hacking and intellect?
Yeah, I think you choose intellect and then do, hacking.
Wow.
32.
First success.
So you realize that the ship AI has been compartmentalized. There's Mr. Tim, and then there's this other section that's much bigger. You hit this kind of firewall, and it takes you a while because it's protected by 32-bit code, and you don't have the key. Mr. Tim is, nagging in your ear, and at some point, as you're typing, your characters are disappearing, as if Mr. Tim is fighting you a little bit, erasing them, and he almost seems annoyed. Captain Max, you need to stop that right now. Captain Max, you need to stop that right now. And you just keep hacking, I think, and find this larger partition of the ship's AI. And you realize that Mr. Tim is an offshoot of some nature. What does Captain Max do when he finds that?
Offshoot. How many AIs are there on this ship, Mr. Tim? Do you realize that you've been divided amongst yourself almost?
Captain Max, I have no idea what you're talking about. There's just me. This Bishop Gamzit is mine.
No, Mr. Tim, there's files in here. There's something is not right, Mr. Tim. Something's off. You should be able to access these files, but you can't, and you're not. I don't know.
You keep hacking?
To try to get Mr. Tim off my back, I'm gonna ask him I'm gonna keep hacking, but while I'm hacking, I'm gonna ask him to give me a situation. Mr. Tim, can you give me a situation update on Dr. Rizal?
He goes, there are no cameras in Dr. Rizal's fan room. I hear noises, but I don't know exactly what's happening in his, makeshift lab, as he calls it. Captain Harm is running laps in the main hangar with the android Pander, and he shows he takes over the screen from you, Captain Max. Your code disappears, and you see a grainy, green and black and white picture of Harm, running laps in the hangar bay, going around and round and round. Prander's popped up on one side. She goes, see, you should go run with Captain Harm. You might relieve some stress, Max. Or we could play chess.
No, Mr. Tim, I think we all know how the chess game goes, and
Well, I could let you win.
why don't you let me into these files, Mr. Tim? What are you
I have
trying
no
to
idea what you're talking about, Captain Max. What files?
You keep wiping the code off the screen, Mr. Tim.
I am?
Max is just going to shake his head and just start hacking again.
All right. Make me a hacking roll to see how far you get. 26. You just start hacking through layer after layer. You find ship logs, and the name of the Bishop Gambit changes. You find like long ship logs of different captains under different names, different ship components, different crew, missions, cryo, like in a lineage, really, one captain after another, until you get to Captain Alexandria, and it has 3 listing of crew: Captain Alexandria, her daughter Jessica Elizabeth Halloran, and Rocco Kalahar, ex-Marine, and just 3 of them. And you get like an incept date of about 52 years ago. Incept date of Captain Alexandria's, well, it would probably be more like 30 into 30s, like 30 something years ago. Captain Alexandria became the new captain of the ship. It was under a different name. And then lastly, ship renamed to Bishop Gambit, and the date is about a week outside the Bleeder's plague in the albino gorilla. There's a little blink in the cursor, Max, and you see a secondary, tertiary, or quaternary directory with a single entry that you hit on it, hit the key, and it just says locked, enter key, you're muted.
Third time's a charm. I guess I'm gonna hack it. Obviously, that's the only thing I'm good at. And luck runs out.
You're trying to hack it when Mr. Tim interrupts you because he's gone quiet, and he says, Captain Max, sensors have just picked up another ship on the far side of the planet. It seems to be matching our speed, which is why we haven't seen it. I'm not certain how long it's been there, and maybe it takes your concentration away, and your pinky slides over return or something, and you hit a key that you weren't expecting it, and it locks down that section of the drive as you're trying to mess with it. And Captain Max interrupts you, talking about this other ship. And this has probably happened for a while. You've been at it for a day or two as Rizal and Oni are working on the cure, and Harm is trying to relieve stress. And he kind of interrupts you as you sleep on it one day, come back on the second day as you're trying to hack through, because it takes quite a lot of time. It's pretty involved. When he tells you about the ship and he kind of interrupts you, do you do anything specific, Max?
Max is immediately going to look at I'm assuming we have like a radar or something.
Yes, like sensors.
Sensors, yeah. He's immediately going to look over at the next computer next to him, the sensor computer, and try to figure out how far the ship is exactly away from them.
He just sees it on the opposite side of the planet. Max tells you he can't really get a good sensor lock on it. He doesn't know what the ship is. It just seems to be matching your speed and isn't falling, like it's tracking you, but staying behind the far side of the planet.
Stop the ship, Mr. Tim.
Roger that. Shutting down drives, going to orbit. Oni and Captain Rizal, you're on the second day. Oni, make a body save, and Dr. Rizal make a body save at disadvantage. So Oni, you're sick. You could feel it. How does it affect you? You're going to pick one of your attributes, strength, speed, intellect, combat, and put it at disadvantage. But how does that illness manifest as you're trying to help Dr. Rizal? And which of those you think it affects?
I think you can make a case for it to how it would affect combat, meaning your reaction time, your vision, whether it gets blurred because of the illness, the fever. So that's what I'm going to choose.
Okay.
And how do I do that? There's like
whenever you would click on it, it'll just say disadvantage, and so whenever you use that.
But how do I flag it?
You could just put it in your notes. There's no way necessary to flag it at the moment.
I would be aware of these organisms within me, and I will try to focus inward in order to put up barriers to try to stop them, to shut down my own, to control my own physiology, to shut down my own cell mechanisms, so that I will starve the organisms.
Okay. I think when you make your next body save, as you start to feel them, I would let you use mysticism. So if you don't find a cure in the next, every day you make a body save, like the third day, meeting day is one more day away, you can make that body save with mysticism instead of flat. I think you can do that. Yeah, you can choose mysticism next time and add it, because you're looking inward at these vibrating little particles.
Is that rolling it now?
No, we'll see what you do this day to see if you find some degree, or at least get a success on the cure. Dr. Rizal, you're just headed south. One of your other attributes gets disadvantaged. How does the second day of the illness affect Dr. Rizal?
I think it's like debilitating on the body. So what we talked about the first time, it was speed. So I think strength would follow suit.
Yeah, you start getting weaker and weaker.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
You're trying to talk Oni through managing the lab on the second day. Oni, you're probably manually trying to help him, and I would probably make a roll using intellect and surgery or field medicine, as you're now doing this more mechanical bit, unless you have an argument or a role play that you think you would use something else. But
no, as mentioned, I mean, yes, I am the Eastern medicine, but I do retconning my character maybe has some lab experience from working in the West.
Okay.
Probably helping to pay for his way on a ship, so to speak. So, and just roll normal.
Yep. So what we're going to do is, you're going to roll normal, but both you and Dr. Rizal are now working parallel. So you have a choice of helping him in his role or making a roll on your own in attempts to create your own success. So if you succeed, you get one success to those three that you need before you find a cure.
And so if I roll a success and he rolls a success, that's two,
right?
So yeah, let's do that. What do you think, Dr. Rizal?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. It's either advantage or rolling on your own.
Oh Christ, I failed.
Dr. Rizal,
you're going to kill us, man.
Can I hit a stim pack? Let me get that good go juice. Get that advantage.
Oni, how do you fumble that? Like, what happens? Like, how do you see that you fail? Like, to follow directions, or
I find the organism to be very elusive. It is itself aware of my presence and hiding from me.
You mentioned that to Dr. Rizal?
Yes.
Dr. Rizal, you have done a fantastic job creating this bioweapon. Oni doesn't do good work this day, the second day, one day before you're supposed to meet the rendezvous. What do you do as you're trying to find this cure and starting to fade?
So, as Oni says that to me, I look at him, I'm like, of course, this is my life's work. It can't so easily be undone. And he's kind of like boasting at the same time, like slowly dying. Yeah, I think, would it be too far-fetched to try to, I mean, outside of obviously the advantage of possibly rolling at advantage, I think it makes sense in terms of roleplay because he's physically deteriorating, I could argue.
Sure. To what? Use a stim pack and...
Yeah.
How would that give him an advantage?
I would think that a stim pack would probably give him like maybe a boost of adrenaline, alertness.
If you're going to use intellect, I think that would. So you took speed and strength now, or disadvantage.
Yes.
Relying solely on your mind. I think that if you're going to do that, the downside is this: you can get advantage on that roll, but instead of curing, 1d5, 1d10 health impact, 1d10 health. instead of curing 1d10 health, you're going to run your body ragged and you're going to take 1d10 harm.
Let's do it.
Okay. So you take that stim pack. It gives you a brief, 10 minutes of alertness. Roll your harm first. Roll 1d10. So you take 8 harm as you push your body to the limits, physically, really relying on your mind and the same time that you have the virus and bioweapon raging through your body. And you can make intellect plus, I would assume, exobiology. Did you use an outside source to make this bioweapon? Is this from a...
Yes. So if I remember my backstory correctly, he was enlisted specifically targeting alien life forms to help kind of like even the playing field.
All right. So you could roll intellect with exobiology at advantage.
Dr. Rizal, the creature, the organism seems to be able to evade. It is actually physically hiding itself. It seems, dare I say, sentient?
He'll kind of like look at you with like a glazed eye set. Like, I developed these for mankind. They're specifically targeted towards xenobiology. So that is very possible. And then, as he kind of trails off with that sentence, he kind of goes, "I'm so with this tip." Good luck.
Oh, there you go. So what does he do? Like he...
Okay, so after he stabs himself with the stim pack, I guess we just do like a little montage where like the light kind of comes back in his eyes, and then like, the meme with like the algebraic things in the back just go through, and he just starts going on his drawing board and following his formula, trying to reverse engineer his life's work in a matter of 10 minutes, and then he kind of like puts his pen down there. He kind of points at the wall of figures and numbers and text. That is step 1.
All right. So we go to this third day, the day of the meeting. Captain Max, you stop the ship relatively drifting in orbit, and the other ship just mirrors your position on the other side of the planet. Whatever you do, whatever you have Mr. Tim do, move, reposition, the ship always seems to be on the other side, and you can't really get a good locale of it throughout that day. On the third day, Mr. Tim probably tells everyone on personal communicator that the beacon has been lit on the planet, indicating the drop site.
Thank you, Mr. Tim. And I'm assuming Max would try to track everybody down to make sure everybody's ready.
Yeah, you probably find Harm, exhausted, running around loops. Harm, Mr. Max comes and says, on this third day that the beacon for the drop site has been located. What happens between you two as you prepare perhaps to get ready to go down to the planet? Or what do you do in preparation?
I'm probably just gonna get ready with my gear, even though realistically I'm hoping that I'm not gonna need it, because it's just habit at that point where it's just like, I'm gonna have this on me no matter what situation we're going into.
So, Harm, there's a contraband hold and there's a box full of grenades. If you look at the items package, at the items tab over on the right, you'll see a new section called grenades. Claymore, flashbang, jelly, pulse, tear gas. Does Harm outfit himself with any grenade or just take his normal weapons, or plan to take his normal kit? Everyone's going to have to be in evac suits anyways because the atmosphere isn't conducive to human life.
Where did you say I'd find that? I'd probably do 1 or 2 grenades.
So if you look at the top where it says, where it has the doubles for chat, and you go over to items, which is a little suitcase, there should be a tab or a folder that says grenades, and you can draw them onto your but the whole crew knows there's those grenades there. I think Max had just grabbed a couple before, not knowing what was what, but those are the kind of explosive devices you find in the contraband hold. Captain Max Harm is getting ready to perhaps go planet side. Do you say anything to him, or
Have you heard anything from Dr. Rizal and Oni?
I have not, no.
I'm gonna go check on him.
okay, Captain Max or Harm? Do you go with Max, or you just go to outfit yourself to planning to go to planet side and stowing your gear near the shuttle?
I'll probably go with him
Okay.
just to hopefully get some answers, even
All right.
if he won't accurately say that he wants them.
So Captain Max and Harm, you go aft. There's a void between probably the aft starboard hangar and the main hangar, this kind of empty space that has this big rectangular fan room with a hatch, really. And that's Dr. Rizal's, temporary lab. You know what space it is. Dr. Rizal, the outer door, does it look any different than any other outer door?
Nope. Looks exactly the same as everything else.
All right. Just making sure you didn't put a sign or something else there. So, Max and Harm, I assume you just opened the door?
Yeah, I'm gonna knock on the door.
Okay. Oni and Dr. Rizal, you hear this clanking.
Since Dr. Rizal managed to roll success, I assume he will continue working. And since I failed, I will answer the door.
This is the next day, but you guys are working like through the night or, that sort of thing. But probably in the morning, this knock comes. You make another roll today for study, but yeah.
Yes. Who is there?
It's Max and Harm. Is everything okay in there?
Can you bring us some food and some beverages? Sandwiches. A sandwich would be very nice.
I would, although it's time to go planet side. I was wondering if y'all would be joining or...
No. Currently, we are trying to solve a certain problem that we will fill you in on when we resolve it. Bring sandwiches.
Not suspicious. What is going on in there? What?
You're like talking through your communicators because the hull is metal, the door is closed. You're like going back and forth like you're on a string phone, shortwave.
We are currently trying to solve Dr. Rizal's bioweapon. We have an infection. You do not want to cross this barrier. Bring sandwiches and beverages.
Excuse me, but contamination? What? How did he get infected with his own bioweapon? What? He shot himself up?
I think Harm would be able to say.
Well, I did see him stick himself with a syringe, so it is highly possible that is what happened.
Why would he? Okay. If he's infected, are you infected? You're in there. Are you okay?
We are both trying to save our lives.
How did you become infected?
I think you're analyzing this too much, Mr. Max.
No, I need to know because how it's transmitted. Because that cryo bay, there's someone, and we cannot lose cryo bay 10. And if she's infected and she dies, we are gonna have big problems.
I will leave that for you to resolve. That is a good question. Is it aerosolized? Is it? I imagine it would be if it's a weapon.
Oni knows that no one was infected at a cryo.
That's right.
He knows that, and then he probably knows, not necessarily the moment he got infected, but soon thereafter when that tube dropped with Dr. Rizal's blood, he didn't feel anything, but maybe he felt the vibrations of it enter his body. So he knows that they didn't come out of cryo infected.
Yeah, that's my bad. I forgot that we had figured that out already. So yes, Mr. Max, only the two of us are infected. I do not think you have to worry about cryobay.
Okay. Well, I'm probably not going to bring you your sandwiches.
Just leave them outside the door.
Yes, and stay on the communicator. Is Rizal? Oh, is he still alive in there?
He's holding on.
Well, please keep me updated. We're gonna go planet side to do the transaction, and also there is a ship that I fear may be tailing us. I'm not quite entirely sure. They've been just slowly following us on the other side of the planet. I tried to stop the ship to see what would happen, but they too just stopped. So just be wary of that while we're gone.
We will. Have Mr. Tim inform us if any other life forms board the ship other than the crew.
Okay, so Max and Harm are going to go planet side with the artifacts, and Dr. Rizal and Oni are going to stay ship side and keep working. It sounds.
I think that's it. I'm gonna also probably bring. Do I have my item weapons? Yeah, I'm gonna bring the FN slug revolver and a few grenades as well.
So, Captain Max, you retrieve the artifacts, I imagine.
Yeah.
The scepter, the trephaning hook, and the metallic bag with the black icosahedral baubles that are kind of iridescent. There's like 23 of them in that kind of metallic bag or metallic woven bag to go planet side with Harm. Go ahead.
May I ask, Prander, Harm, can you carry Prander on your back? Maybe he can also carry a weapon.
I should be able to. Realistically, if I do that, would I be able to use my guns, or would I have
Prander
to
looks at you like if
armor?
you float it to Prander looks at you, gets big eyes, he's got no legs. He goes, "That would be fantastic. I'm a luxury model and just repositioned for data collection, but I think that would be an adventure. Are you going to tie me to your back? What kind of gun will I use?"
We can certainly find something to tie you to my back. I'm trying to figure out what kind of guns do we are all the guns that are in the
Yeah, you probably
weapon section. What we
probably
can
the
use?
best gun for him is he kind of looks at the shotgun. He goes, that'll probably just blow me. I can use one of those little ones. And he looks at it. It's the submachine gun. That would work, don't you think?
Okay. We'll do that.
All right. So, Captain Max and you retrieve the artifacts, and you and Harm are going to load up in the shuttle with Prander. Prander gets in a evac suit too, but he doesn't have legs on, and he says, "Harm, just tie my legs around you. That'll hold me." And
Okay.
he's like riding Harm with this, submachine gun over, and you guys are going to go planet side on the planet. Now, the beacon is set in this kind of meadow, if you want to call it a meadow, down these in a ravine. So a ravine comes down, and the beacon is set in that middle, and it has these two little mounds or hills that go funnel down into this flat area, and that's where the beacon is, where you're supposed to meet. Max and Harm, where do you pilot the ship?
I'm gonna say, I guess, as close to the beacon as we could get in the meadow.
Okay. Harm, that sounds like a good idea.
I have no complaints. As long
All right.
as we can get out of there quickly if needed, we're good.
So you drop the spider shuttle down to Pena 2, and the planet's atmosphere is gaseous. You're flying down. It's just swirls of brown and silver, kind of scintillating silver or bronze, because you're not quite sure. You're in full evac suit with the hood on. Prander's, draped over the top of Harm, and you land pretty close to the beacon. You land at the beacon, and you just see it's like a stick with a little bauble on the top that's sending out an electromagnetic pulse. That is like a drone. It's been flown there and dropped down, and you drop down into near the beacon, probably 30-60 feet, and you're in the shuttle looking out the small window, and you don't really see anything. What do you all do when you hit the ground?
Max is just going to kind of continue to look out the window and kind of scan the area before getting out.
Okay. You see about 4 figures come walking out of the gloom, because it is kind of this hazy brown gloom, like if you were in the desert and there's just a sandstorm, but not quite that bad. It's just hazy. So they kind of materialize out of the gloom, and one steps out further, and there's 3 others there. You can't see well because of the haziness, but they're just kind of waiting by the beacon.
Max will drop the ramps and walk out, not before putting a grenade in his hand.
You just got the grenade like in your hand.
Because I know if I got the grenade and I pull the pin, I go up and the artifact goes up as an insurance policy.
We got 3 artifacts really in the backpack. Well, it depends on how you want to count those little high cost Higo baubles. There's 23 of them, so technically you might have 20.
I just out of character. I just think it's funny that everyone's giving crap about Dr. Rizal, like shooting himself up, but here we are. Got a grenade in my hand in case it goes off.
That is Max's go-to. He had a grenade in his hand when he went to look for the alien, and
so
go to here.
Max, you shoulder the backpack with the artifacts. Prander's wrapped over the top of Harm. It says, "All right, Captain Harm, what do I need to be doing?" You hear the of he's talking over the intercom of his submachine gun.
Hey, obviously I'm going out with Max, but I'll just say we wait until we know what the situation is before we do that. Follow my lead if necessary.
Right. You start shooting, I start shooting. Great plan. I'm ready. Ooh, this is far cry from being a luxury model. Hot tubs have nothing on this. And you walk out. Walk out into the thing. Max, you're up front. I see maybe Harm a little bit behind you. I don't know, left or right. Is that about right, Harm? You stay a little bit behind, or are you just right next to Max? Or
I'm probably like a step or two behind him, but once Max stops, I'll be next to him.
Okay. Max, the figure in front of you raises up a hand. They're in full evac suits. Their evac suits look shabby. They've seemed to be patched up a little bit. You get closer and the visor may be scratched. The paint job on the helmet is, worn. Some of the metallic parts don't look like they've been upkept really well. Maybe there's a little rust. Maybe they're all carrying kind of weapons. You hear her voice. "Are you here to trade the artifact?" And it's a female voice. She stands out in front, but she's still pretty tall, pretty wide, but she's female just by the voice coming through the shortwave on your audio. The 2 behind her are pretty big. Both of them have shotguns, and she has like a slug revolver in both hands, but she only has one, and the other one's just in a holster on the outside. But the other 2, have leveled shotguns at you. They're standing on the right and left, and she's out maybe 10 feet, 3 meters out in front of you. And she says, right there, "Where's the artifact? We're here to make the exchange."
Where's the money?
"Back there."
And I've got the artifacts right here. And you said it was kind of hazy. Would she be able to, we're close enough where if I open the bag a little bit, she could see them?
Sure.
So I'll show her the artifacts in the bag.
"Those are mighty pretty. You ready to make the exchange?"
I'm ready whenever you are. I'd like to get this off of my ship, and I'd like to go about my business.
"Sam, give the man his money." And the big dude at the back takes off a backpack and throws it. It lands kind of obliquely. It's like at a 45-degree angle to him. It's maybe 10 feet away from you. It lands in the dirt, and she looks at him and he goes, pointing to his shoulder my shoulder's bad. I can't throw that pack that far. She's kind of looked at him going, "Really?" And she looks back at you and says, "All right, we made the trade then. We'll take them off your hands and you get the money."
Also, do you know anything about the ship that's orbiting this planet along with ours? That wouldn't be you guys, would it?
"Oh, certainly."
Okay. And then Max should have put the grenade in the bag. So then I could have just shot the bag if things went bad. Max will kind of throw the bag towards them.
Okay. She goes, "Right, nice doing business with you." And the other guy on the left comes up and picks up the artifact bag and slings it on the shoulder, and they just walk backwards, not taking their guns off you, into the gloom of the haziness as you're planet side. Dr. Rizal and Oni, you're working feverishly in your fan room. Both of you are doing terrible. Well, Dr. Rizal is fading faster. Go ahead.
One success. No, that's
One success. And you're continuing to work on it. Oni, what tactics do you take this time? Or, you start feeling the illness start to seed your body. Do you continue doing manual?
I'm going to try to communicate with it.
Sure. I guess that would be intellect, but mysticism. Look inside your body and
molecularly communicate with it.
okay.
Try to convince it to stop.
Oh, like a self-healing.
Sure.
Okay.
You could call it that if you need to. If you need to understand it that way.
You're affecting its vibrations.
Yes. So, intellect.
The mysticism, I would think.
Please. No. It's up to you, Dr. Rizal.
Dr. Rizal, you're watching, and I think Oni, I don't know, what does it look like when he's looking inside? You're standing at this table with all this stuff around you, trying to make headway mechanically, but you abandon that. What does it look like to Dr. Rizal as you do this and perhaps fail?
Sort of in a meditative pose, and when it fails, he says, "Goshi," who has linguistics.
Right. Max does. He's off the ship.
I think Dr. Rizal would like see that happen, and he would just kind of like, I don't know if he knows what he's really looking at anymore. He's kind of like try to shake his head back to focusing on what he was doing. Mechanics wise, his body is falling apart. We know this thing about the stim pack doing damage. If he was to inject himself again, would he die from it? Because he doesn't have any wounds.
He would take at least one wound and 1d10.
Okay. I think it's worth it.
And it's his third one of the day. He'd have to make a death save.
Die another way. Either way.
Per the stim pack rules. So first, roll to see if you succeed, and we'll do the stim pack after. So you get advantage on whatever roll you're using.
Okay. For all the marbles. There's exobiology.
Right.
Under stim pack.
Right, so you get advantage, I guess, intellect with exobiology.
All right. Here goes. That seems appropriate.
So take a wound and roll 1d10. It probably would end up that way anyways, but right, so you take 8, so you go to 14 and roll a 1d10. This is a death save from using 3 stim packs. If you roll 3 or under,
there you go.
Oh my God. What happens, Dr. Rizal, in this moment as your heart is beating faster and faster and faster and faster?
What is the death by?
What is the death? Yeah, what does Oni see as you fail?
Like, what is a death roll 1?
Is you die.
Is that a heart attack?
Oh, well, can I try to revive him?
I don't know. We've never done that. Let's see. What does the rule say? Stim pack death save. What does it say? Let's see. Panic death save. Oh, you're unconscious and dying. You die in 1d5 rounds without intervention. Oh, so you did survive.
Okay.
But yeah, so you do, right? So actually, you roll the stim pack, and you fail the stim pack, right? And let's see what stim pack. I think you roll a death save after you fail.
What is the stim pack roll?
So a stim pack roll is you.
Oh yeah.
If you roll under the number, then you make a death save.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually have to roll your death save because you rolled under 3.
Okay.
This
now
is
I
the
roll
number.
my death save.
Yeah, this is the number that counts. If you would have rolled above a 3, you wouldn't have to make a death save.
Okay. So it's a 1d10?
Yes.
What page is that on?
That's on page... well, the death saves are on page 29. The stim pack is on in the equipment where it talks about it. That's on page...
It's they're all bad.
Right? You gotta roll like, a 4 and under on your death save.
No, but I don't get a role play option in this one. It's just you're unconscious and dying, comatose or died.
Right, but
So
I
black out.
Yeah, if you roll under, oh, so you rolled you already rolled then?
No. That was the first roll. I'm gonna roll now.
Okay. What happens, Dr. Rizal?
What is this? Where's this? I just wanted to try to get the context of the stim pack. What page is that?
Let me see. That's on page 10 or 11. Page 11. Cures cryo sickness You roll 1d10. If you fail, you roll under the number of times you've used it. Then you roll a death save.
Okay. So just so I have an understanding of what is happening to this character, am I just straight die, right?
Unless Oni can make a metaphysical roll, we'll give you one last chance. But what does he see? Like, I would assume that you do die per the rules as written.
So he knows that he knows the inevitable. He did create the damn thing. And, you know, I guess he kind of says, you know, to himself, there's no way a person can undo his life's work in 3 days. But here we are trying. And he just kind of shoots himself up,
Fails.
takes his after he, you know, ejects, he kind of takes his marker, goes back to the drawing board, and his eyes just roll up in the back of his head and he just collapses.
What does Oni do as this happens is Dr. Rizal succumbs to the disease.
His vitals are flatlined.
If you go feel his pulse, if his heart is beating, it's so fast you can't feel it.
Oh,
You know,
can I offer too that when he collapses, the grenade that he had on his belt just rolls out, so Oni can see.
There's the pin still in it.
No, the pin's still in it. I'm just saying, you know,
Oh.
here's a way out for you.
So Oni approaches and takes his hand and begins to vibrate to the point where you cannot see. It becomes one with Dr. Rizal, and he reaches in and massages his heart to try to restore a normal rhythm to it. And hopefully he'll have enough strength to recover from this. I'm just trying to stabilize him at this point.
Yeah, it's a pretty far-fetched thing. I'd have you roll a disadvantage. Mysticism. Unless Dr. Rizal feels like this is his end. That's the character's choice, that this is a good end. If he would like one last ditch effort from mysticism, we could go with that. But I would leave that up to Landshark, really.
That's a tough one.
Do you want to play a new character?
I mean, I'm pretty much resigned to that already, and I'm trying to figure out if this is a good close, anyways. But I feel guilty taking someone else out with me, so I'll offer, sure, the slim chance that you can bring him back to give him one more roll. But in my mind, Dr. Rizal has accepted that he perfected his craft.
That may come to pass.
So it would be a mysticism at disadvantage.
Okay.
Yep. Ooh. Oni, you put your hands on his chest and your vibration goes all the way through his chest to the floor. You could feel maybe around you the test tube glass are jittering on the floor. Things are moving around as you're trying as hard as possible. You can hear that fine tinkle as they're moving, and you take your hands off and Dr. Rizal is still flat, unresponsive, and you feel no pulse. What does Oni do then? Take a stress.
Yeah, no, it already does that automatically, right? It's already
Oh, right, because you failed.
Yeah. Now, what does the auto meds do?
That's for like curing yourself from wounds, harm, yeah, that sort of thing.
Oh, sort of like if you have a chewed up leg, you can
literally
you just slap it on and it kind of does its
right, if you're alive.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think there's anything I can do. I think I will. I have I rolled yet today for?
No, you haven't.
I will speak. I will again try to communicate in an unorthodox fashion with the organism and say, "You have killed your maker.
All right.
You do not have to continue with this. We can reach a commensal relationship."
Roll mysticism. See if it slows down in yourself, Oni. Ooh, those are like polar opposites, a 98 and a 1.
I'm sorry, Dr. Rizal.
I think
I have succeeded in communicating with your organism. Perhaps in your afterlife you can understand this.
I think as Oni does this, that the only thing he really controls is the virus inside himself. And it becomes quiescent, where he stays at this low-level infectious rate. How long that will last for him, how long he can keep it up, he doesn't know. But for today, at least, the virus becomes quiescent in him. Maybe it goes into mourning for Dr. Rizal. Maybe there is some sort of group intelligence in there, some sort of vibration, but it quiesces in him so that he won't have to be affected into a body, say, like the next day mechanically. Like he drops it down somehow, affecting that virus inside him. Captain Max and Harm, you load up into the spider shuttle and lift off. Mr. Tim comes over the intercom. Captain Max, Captain Harm, another ship has entered atmosphere 30 clicks from our position.
Another ship.
They're hailing us, Captain Max. Should I put them through?
Yes, Tim, put them through.
Boy, this is Zachary Weiss from the Nakatomi Corporation. Why are you leaving the drop zone?
I'm gonna fucking kill a bitch. It's gonna happen, God.
Come in, Bishop Gambit. This is Zachary Weiss. Shall we instead meet on your ship?
Let me guess. You didn't put the beacon down?
Oh, no, we sent the beacon. But we sent that through hyperspace and from a closer orbit.
Do you see the other ship? That is...
ship? Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Do you see the other ship that is in orbit?
Just a moment. Roger that. The ship has just left for hyperspace.
That's your artifact.
You're telling me you lost our artifacts, Mr. Gambit?
I am.
Well, we will definitely have to board and talk about this. Nakatomi out.
Max is just pure frustrated.
Max, you're like probably...
Or actually, Max, in a panic, he's going to grab the bag and try to open the bag.
Oh, you look in the bag now to see if there's money in it?
Yeah.
All right, let's ask Fate. Is there money in the bag? I didn't decide if there was money in the bag, but let's see. I think there's probably money in the bag because they thought you would have looked in it to begin with. So I think there's money in the bag. I think that as you count through it, you make a quick count, but there's obviously somewhere between 25 and 50 million credits.
Max is going to grab the bag and put the bag in a locker and try to hide it somewhere.
But when you get back on the ship?
Yeah, when I get back on the ship, yeah.
Yeah, the spider shuttle, attaches to the ship, and you start hearing the airlock cycle, and you hear Mother's voice in your head. She says, "Thank you."
I thought we weren't connected anymore. Thank you for what?
For setting my eggs free.
Well, at least they're not aboard the ship.
And we'll end it there for today.
Wait.
Does...
Oh my God. Are the little bulb things what the eggs were?
Yeah.
Probably in that scepter or something.
What do you think the eggs are, Captain Max?
Oh my God.
Nothing good is all I can think right now. I'm just so...
Harm clues in. Harm, you probably hear this over. I don't know if Max tells you, but if Harm did hear about that sort of thing, or Max mumbles it, what would Harm think the eggs are?
He'll if he hears Max mumble something, he'll be like, "Oh my God, were the baubles the eggs? Like what?"
Yeah, those icosahedral little baubles that fit in your hand that were dark and iridescent were the eggs. No one really thought of them, and I talked about them when you were bringing them down and told you they were 23 to see what you would do. But it kind of everything, and this might happen in real life, you get so wound up in what's happening that the obvious misses you.
I was thinking about Resolve the whole time and how that was going to go.
I tried to give you a little bit of hints that the group wasn't what they seemed. Their stuff was beaten up and patched, and they had rusted stuff.
I thought that was kind of weird, but I was like I wasn't sure. Oh my God.
I was just so concentrated on getting the deal done to get back to the ship to check on Resolve. I was like, get back to the ship. If we can get out of this without having a major conflict and just get back to the ship and check on Resolve, that's a win.
Well, hopefully you had fun. I had a different idea. As a GM, I don't know what's going to happen, how you're going to approach this. I kind of flew by my seat of my pants at certain parts of it. How do I realistically do that search for a cure and those other things and let it play out? my initial idea was that you would hit the ground and there would be a conflict. The other party would want them, and then Nakatomi would arrive, and now you got these three parties that are trying to figure out what the heck to do. But the way it played out, I had a lot of fun with Oni and Dr. Rizal staying back. Hopefully you all liked it. It's a different kind of death for Dr. Rizal. It's not conflict in that nature, but it's set up by Dr. Rizal's and the character's play of having him jab himself. And I have to figure out a way to how do I like resolve that, make it and I don't know if you're going to fail. Actually, I thought their roll was pretty low. To get 3 successes, I thought, oh, they're going to find a cure, no problem. No.
not in this game.
No. And then Landshark took that risk of taking the 3rd stim pack.
It still didn't help.
Which I thought was realistic too. I thought, well, he only has about a 30% chance of rolling under that and rolling a death save. But hopefully you liked the session. I did, at times for a gym, I felt like it may have dragged a little bit, and I don't know how well I did manage that middle section, but I did have a lot of fun with you all playing and RPing the session. Any questions or comments for me?
No, not so much questions and comments. I just want to kind of talk to the group. Like, I know I did kind of just risk a TPK, but I remember trying to think back to my character story of this character is like, it's very callous, and he kind of thinks calculated, kind of thinks things through, and in his mind, I'm just trying to justify so I don't cause any future rifts and future characters, but per my character, I think for him it was his best chance of survival, so that's kind of how he went. I'm glad it didn't take out anyone else, so yet. So there's that. But yeah, I had a lot of fun. It was very good role-playing opportunities. I am a little sad to see Dr. Rizal go. I had a lot of fun with him. He was a very interesting character, and the way that he came out and turned out was very fun to play.
Yeah, very enjoyable to play as well. There's absolutely, I mean, I did have that sort of Hail Mary, right? That was it. There was nothing else I could have done.
Really?
Okay. I just wanted to answer.
The character death is sometimes complicated from a GM perspective, and we knew we were coming into Mothership where it could be really dangerous. Now, Landshark has lost 2 characters, but how do I realistically state a rules as written with an idea that characters could die, and what do I do in that moment, really? And I know Landshark fairly well, so to a fair extent, I played with him before, so I felt comfortable that letting him make the call. Either way, we played the stim pack as rules is written. So what do you do as a GM? It's one of those games where character death is kind of baked into it, and I didn't want to see Dr. Rizal leave either. I thought Landshark's play of him and injecting him in that whole idea, that thread of trying to find a cure, was completely interesting, and kind of drive the session when I'm not making those choices. And I thought, and when I rolled the dice to see how many successes you went, I rolled a D10 and I got a 3, and I thought, I didn't have any concerns. I thought, they're going to find it. And my only concern was, okay, when they find it, how do I narratively explain that they find a cure to this bioweapon that he's already released on the market? How do I explain that? That was my hard part. And then failure after failure after failure, I'm like, uh-oh, it's made up.
Yeah.
So
it was funny too, because I had like a whole different scene of how I was gonna end it.
Right.
It was gonna be me trying to ask Oni to explain religion to me, and as he's starting to talk, I pull the pin. I had like this whole scene in my head, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna die to a sit back. Okay, I mean, sure.
So not only have we released an alien bioweapon, but we've also released alien eggs.
Right. You're just digging a big deep hole. The eggs were always the icosahedros, and there's a balance, like as a GM, how much prodding do I give to point them in the right direction? And I decided just to see if anyone would key in on those little things I'm telling that are there, but I didn't want to press it on you or push it on you or give it to you outside that range, because it would have been interesting if you had figured that out on the way down. What would Max and Harm do now they have these alien eggs? How would they take care of that? That's an easier out. But I didn't feed you a lot of information. I gave you the facts and cures and let you try to figure it out, but no one thought, and I even said, even when the other group came down, they said, we're here to get the artifact, singular.
Yes, I heard that.
And then they look in the bag and there's more than one, and they say, oh, pretty, and they take it. The ending, I just came up on the spur to last. Maybe I realized that once Max and Harm get to the planet, things have changed a little bit. What do I do with the Nakatomi? How do they come in? When do they come in? It's going to be a little bit different. And I decided not to go with a combat scene. I decided to do that RP, like they take the goodies and go, and then Nakatomi shows up, and then I hit Max with it at the end. The ship shows up, and then he's sitting there, and as he docks, Mother voice comes out and says, thank you. Because I didn't, as a GM, I didn't know how, I wanted you to find that on your own. I think if I would have tried to push you to find the eggs or gave you more and more hints, it wouldn't have been as realistic as if you found it and clued in on your own. You find that clue to this mystery, just like the other mysteries that are now floating around the ship. Who's this woman? What's happening to Mr. Tim? This other stuff, which actually went much further than I thought it would. I decided to keep it low key with the eggs and see if you figured it out on your own. Hopefully you had fun with that section, Max.
I did. I've started keeping a notebook.